It's November, it's put up or shut up, it's win or go home, it's one day at a time. It's also a cliche magnet, so it's got to be the playoffs in the dojo, and it is. Game 1 features a matchup between the Red Scare and Blue Steel, and there was a lot of trash talk in our show's emails this week, a lot of complaints, so let's see if these guys are going to let it out at the desk. We're going to be talking the top 4 in college football. 2 Tiger teams shockingly top the first rankings of the season. And speaking of shocking, Peyton Manning remains in control of an undefeated Broncos squad. Our panelists will tell you how impressed they are through Week 8 in the NFL. And is KD still the big dog in OKC, or is it Russell Westbrook? Who's the big dog here, and who wants a shot at the title? Let's find out right now. UC, let's go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Unsportsmanlike Conduct. The right to play for a championship is on the line, so hopefully you guys did your homework. We're going to begin with teams vying for a title themselves, but first, there's a lot of animosity this week, but there was a little bit of animosity right before the show started. A huge question we need answers for. Is a hot dog a sandwich, or is it not? And we'll start with Andre.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you'll get more in the yellow card if we win. But I will tell you, a hot dog clearly is not a sandwich. Are you kidding me? This is one of the most ridiculous debates. I'm going to keep it short. It's just not. I'm just going to keep it at that for now.
It's not. Shepard, this is important.
For the first and only time I'm going to agree with Andre today, it's not a sandwich. It goes sideways. How is that even possible?
All right, points for everybody. So we'll just call it 0-0, so that's where we're going to start off anyway. And now to something that is completely unrelated, and that's college football. The Clemson Tigers, they're on top of the college football world for now. Not the Ohio State University, Andre, who has been ranked #1 since winning the national title in January. In fact, the Buckeyes aren't even second. They sit third behind the LSU Hornets. And, of course, what's a playoff without the boys from Tuscaloosa, Bama, of course, holding down that 4th spot, making them the only team with 1 loss. Cue the controversy. 4 of these 6 teams on the outside, they have a perfect record and want some answers. We're going to get some answers right now from Shepard. Shepard, start us off.
I believe that TCU is the best team looking on the outside, looking in. What can I say about TCU? They're 3rd in yards, 4th in points, 6th in passing yards. All that is true, and that's in the nation. They're also comparable defensively to LSU, which is a top 20 defense, even though they've had 160 more snaps played. They faced and beaten some of the top scoring offenses in the league, and they've beaten them every time. And they will face one more team that's not ranked in Kansas, and the rest of the way is just bolstering their resume.
I mean, what can you say about TCU except that their defense stinks? Yes, their offense is great because they have to be. They have to put up those points. They almost lost to a Texas Tech team. Baylor's better than them in the rankings, and they're probably going to beat them when they play. We'll talk. I mean, I'm not even going to argue Baylor, but Baylor's better than them. If I wanted to argue a Big 12 team, I could argue Baylor. But I'm going to actually argue with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I want to take a challenge. If a team with a loss can get in, like Alabama did, and in terms of that, I think that the Fighting Irish should be a team with 1 loss that gets in. The Fighting Irish, their only loss is to Clemson. It was at Clemson, a very difficult game on a 2-point conversion. If they get that 2-point conversion, they had all the momentum in the world, probably win that game, but they didn't. They lost, barely. But they have way better wins than TCU. Any win that TCU has doesn't compare to any of the wins that Notre Dame has. They beat Georgia Tech. They destroyed Georgia Tech. They beat USC when USC was relatively decent. They beat Navy. They're the only loss that Navy has. They're also the only loss that Temple has at Temple. They have way better wins than any of the wins TCU has. I talk about that game that TCU had. They almost lost to Texas Tech if it wasn't for a tip ball in the end zone. They almost lost to Minnesota at the beginning of the year. They haven't looked good so far. They've had like 1 or 2 blowout wins and a team that was expected to blow out everybody because they play nobody. I mean, I don't see how you can say TCU is the #1 team, I don't see how you can say they should even be a playoff team right now when Baylor has been playing better than them against the same opponents.
They're undefeated, Shep.
Yes, they are, and that's a point against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish is that they've lost a game. I don't believe that a team. I don't believe that
real
a team
opponents because they play real opponents.
A real opponent's like Navy. Navy's not a good team.
Navy hasn't lost a game other than against the Fighting Irish. That's their only loss in the season. They're 6-1.
You're bringing up teams that have shown themselves to be bad teams. Georgia Tech has, what, 4 wins and 5 losses?
Yeah, but they played real good opponents all year long. I mean, Georgia Tech, they were ranked at the beginning of the year. They were highly ranked. They've played close games all year long and lost tough games.
You're bringing up teams that have been that were ranked at the beginning of the season
USC just beat Utah.
and fell out of the
USC just
rankings.
beat Utah. Notre Dame beat them nicely. I mean, I just talked about they beat Temple. Temple was undefeated. They beat them at Temple. That's a signature win. Name me one signature win TCU has, and I'll concede.
All right, I'm going to concede that right there because I'm pretty sure Andres did a little mic drop. I'm actually kind of astonished here, and I'm going to have to give the points to Andre. Of course, TCU has played very well, but yes, that defense not doing very well. And Shep, you mentioned Kansas. I don't know why Kansas. They've lost like 900 games in a row. Notre Dame has 1 loss, and that is to Clemson, who, of course, the committee clearly loves. But let's keep talking college football and focus on Clemson now. This is the first time they've been ranked #1 since 1981. They also won the title that year, by the way. And Dabo Swinney has these same expectations for this squad in 2015. Many people were surprised with the ACC taking the top spot over Andre's Big Ten and the SEC, as have a couple of close. They've had a couple of close calls along the way. They did hang on, of course, and the committee clearly loves them. But Andre, are you impressed?
I was planning on arguing that yes, I'm impressed, that yes, Clemson is the #1 team in the nation. I was actually coming in here, I was looking at them. I've been impressed all year long, but yet, you know what? I'm not impressed because Ohio State is still the #1 team in the nation until they get knocked off. I don't see how you can do that to a team. I understand that college football is one of these things where you turn around year after year and you have to do it anew. I understand that. But this Ohio State team's a little bit different because they basically have the exact same team. I don't see how you can say that this Ohio State team, that's basically the same team, they haven't lost, and all of a sudden you say, hey, well, let's jump them with Clemson. Let's have Clemson jump them. Let's have LSU jump them. Heck, I don't understand how you do that. Urban Meyer, I bring this stat up every week because it's so incredible. Urban Meyer has still not lost a regular season game in the Big Ten since he's been there. Would you put your money against him to lose one of these last games in the Big Ten? Probably not. Would you put your money on Clemson? Who would you put your money on, Dabo Swinney or Urban Meyer? I think everybody would say Urban Meyer. Who do you put your money on? The guys who already won a national championship, the Cardale Jones who already beat Wisconsin, who beat Oregon, who beat Alabama, who won a national championship, or whoever the heck, Deshaun Watson, whoever Clemson has a good quarterback, but not one who's won a national championship.
Andre's been dying to get that one first because obviously he wanted to go Ohio State. Shep, you got to fight him now.
I did.
I do. I think once JT Barrett was suspended, that Ohio State lost some of its great talent. It's still a suspension, and he's
against Minnesota. If they don't beat Minnesota, I'll concede they don't deserve.
And Cardale Jones has thrown 5 interceptions this season already, and there's only 7 touchdowns.
Never lost a college football game.
Clemson is the statistical leader in nearly every category in the ACC. They have a great defense as opposed to Ohio State. With Jack Lawson and Tankersley, they have. They're second in rushing yards. They're throwing touchdowns all day long. They're doing great things against good defenses. Like you said, you mentioned Notre Dame earlier. They beat Notre Dame. They beat Boston College, who's one of the best defenses in the league this year.
They have a good defense as opposed to Ohio State, who's been probably, if there's one thing that hasn't disappointed about Ohio State, it's their spectacular defense that's won them a lot of games early in the year. Now their offense has started to get going, so they look again like the national championship that we saw last year. And yes, you're right, JT Barrett's gone for a game, but he'll probably get his job back when he's gone. It's a misdemeanor, so Urban Meyer has a tendency to bring the guy back after a week, and then he'll probably play again. The offense looks the same, but Cardale Jones still has never lost a ball game, so you bring him up as if he's a liability, and then bring the defense up with Joey Bosa and those boys as if they're a liability. They've been incredible all year long, the best defense in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten has better defenses than the ACC, so I don't see how that's an argument. Ohio State, I just don't understand it. Every week we try to talk about a team that's better than Ohio State, and they just keep winning and just keep winning. They'll be the national champions at the end of the year. I talked about it a couple weeks ago, but at the end of the day, they have 3 quarterbacks. They have Cardale Jones, who's going to be starting this week. They have JT Barrett, who'll probably start in a couple weeks. They both have signature wins. Cardale's won a national championship. JT beat Michigan State at Michigan State last year. That set them up for the national championship and was a Heisman Trophy candidate. Name one thing that Clemson has.
I'm gonna have to close you off there. He is a UC champion, and for a reason, he's bringing it in the playoffs. And I'm going to have to give the points to Andre there. OSU's defense is very impressive. The man Joey Bosa, him himself, is the best defense in the country. So we are done with those playoffs, done talking those playoffs. We're done with round 1 of these playoffs. So we're going to take our first break. The score is 4-0 in favor of the Red Scare after 1, and we will be joined by Sarah Weber and Estelle Iserlo for an NFL Lightning Round when we come back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the UC. First ever playoff lightning round here. History being made in the dojo. And speaking of history, as our executive producer / stats and info, Harris Rubenstein, brought up to me, this is the first time in the history of unsportsmanlike conduct where we've had two women going head-to-head. So let's make some more history. Let's see what you got. Sarah, you ready?
Oh, yeah. I'm really ready. I've done my research. I think I know what I'm talking about. I'm excited to talk some San Francisco.
She thinks
yeah.
that she knows what she's talking about, but she does love San Fran. Estelle, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to take you down. I don't even know your team's name.
She doesn't even know her team's name. All right, it's on. But you guys unfortunately can't argue with each other. But let's get to the NFL. On August 22nd, 2013, what a day. Colin Kaepernick had the ability to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, according to a very chipper, of course, Ron Jaworski. That hype was really the peak of Cap's career, and on November 2nd, 2015, this Monday, he was benched for none other than former Jacksonville Jaguars flop Blaine Gabbert. Yes, Blaine Gabbert. He's still in the league. He will bring his totals of 23 touchdowns, 24 picks, and a completion percentage just over 50. Oh, and he's also bringing in an 0-10 record in his last 10 starts. I don't know which way to go here, either Kaepernick or Blaine Gabbert. Both, I don't know what to do here. I'm just going to, Estelle, you tell us first.
I think it was absolutely the right move to bench Kaepernick. They said he's essentially on a mental break. But looking at the stats, he's only scored 12 touchdowns in the past 8 games. He's had 10 interceptions. He's had 56 sacks. That's ridiculous. Not to mention that in 2013, he had an average of 1.3 touchdowns, and now it's 0.75 touchdowns per game. And he signed a huge contract 2 years ago, and he's just not doing well. He's failing. And Gabbert, you know, he might do better. You never know. Maybe he's picking up his game this time.
Maybe he is. Sarah?
I think it's actually I'm glad that's what Estelle said, because this is a completely ridiculous decision coming from Tomasula. San Francisco has had plenty of struggle since they've moved to Santa Clara and since they lost Jim Harbaugh. Not only are they losing Kaepernick, but San Francisco, Carlos Hyde has a foot injury, and he's going to be out of the game. Geep Kreis is filling in as the offensive coordinator, and you're going to see some struggles in San Francisco there as well. Anquan Bolden isn't practicing, and he's one of the toughest wide receivers of all time. For San Francisco, this is a big loss. They're not doing so well in the NFL, possibly the worst team. They're not going to be able to make a comeback if they don't have Kaepernick playing for them. He's being
but Kaepernick hasn't even...
I'm going to have to end it there. No arguments here in the lightning round. That's the beauty of the lightning round. I'm going to have to give the points to Estelle here. I got to say, San Francisco is tanking, but at the same time, if it's really coming down to a player's mentality, that can affect beyond just Kaepernick and can infect his entire team. So let's move on. Speaking of those Niners, just kidding. Let's talk about the best teams in the NFC right now. A lot of surprises. Arizona, of course, St. Louis. They're the top 2 teams in the West. The undefeated Panthers, they lead the North, followed by a surprising 6-2 Falcons team. Minnesota, the Vikings have won 3 straight games. They sit at 5-2 in the East. It's its usual mess, so we won't even go there. But there are a lot of strong teams in the NFC this season. Sarah, who you got?
I am rooting for the Panthers. They are 7-0 right now. They just had a 29-26 overtime victory over Indianapolis. Cam Newton is doing great. He is number 4 in points scored per game. The Panthers have rushed 100 yards in the last 10 games. Yeah, and Cam Newton is definitely the main player here for
MVP
I'm going to go with the Packers. Rodgers has had a much solid path as being a quarterback more than Cam Newton has. They're 6-1. They lost against Denver, but it was probably just a bad game. Not to mention the Packers have the great defense. They've got Clay Matthews. They have Eddie Lacy and James Jones. And proof happens in the game this weekend when they play. You never know. I mean, overall, the Packers are a solid team. They have the potential to kill it.
They do have the potential. They're going to be going head-to-head, so this is interesting. But the Packers' defense isn't quite that of Carolina. I'm going to have to give the points to Sarah. Not only is Carolina great defensively, but as she mentioned, they're running the ball well. And if you can run the ball and play some defense, that always leads to some success in the NFL. But let's move on to the AFC, where the Colts are the most surprising team for all the wrong reasons. I'm pretty sure Andrew Luck actually pulled all the luck out of his hair in those DirecTV commercials he was doing. He's a mess. The entire team is a mess. So who's to blame? Is it offensive coordinator Pep Hamilton? Could it possibly be the man the team rallied around in Chuck Pagano? Or does the responsibility lie in the front office with GM Ryan Grigson? Estelle?
Absolutely the front office. Absolutely Grigson. Grigson has not had the proper protection for Luck up front. He put a bad offensive line in front of the quarterback early this season, and he's hiring 2 old and 2 young teams. He hired Pep Hamilton, was recently fired. And he's calling the shots, but he's not a coach. He doesn't know what he's doing. He didn't draft very good agents, and has mid-round draft picks. He's just making a lot of mistakes that he shouldn't be making as a general manager.
So you say Ryan Grigson. Sarah?
I think it's with Pep Hamilton. Pep Hamilton and Luck have had a relationship coming from Stanford where they both work together. This is a relationship that they've connected over the years, and if Luck is failing, it's due to the fact that Pep is unable to motivate him and push him in the right direction.
Okay, I like the personal connection here, and I'm going to have to give the points to Sarah. I would have to agree. They've brought a lot of pieces in to make things better in Indianapolis, and it just simply hasn't happened. Pep Hamilton, of course, had just gotten fired, so it's interesting that they'd bring him in. So points going to go to Sarah. But I don't think anybody is happier to see the Colts meltdown than Mr. Tom Brady. The Colts have plummeted since Deflategate, and Tom Brady, of course, he's soared, throwing all over the Colts this year in a rematch and dominating every other opponent who's been forced to take the field against him. He's no doubt the MVP, so there goes that argument. But we've talked about a couple of good candidates already here in the lightning round. Who gets the nod for the least valuable player, Sarah?
This is where I'm going to actually throw it back to San Francisco. And this question is asking me who's the least valuable player. I'm going to rephrase it in who is the least valued player, and that is Colin Kaepernick. Since Jim Harbaugh was fired from the San Francisco 49ers, he has become the main scapegoat, and he is unable to flourish with the infrastructure that the team is going through. Many players in San Francisco are completely injured. The team itself needs to rebuild itself in order for him to flourish.
So he's just undervalued. What would you say?
I'm going to go with Sam Bradford from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a huge disappointment. Eagles traded Nick Foles for him in offseason, but he's been terrible. Eagles are currently 3-4, and they were expected to be good in the season. He's got a QB rating of 76.4, which is one of the very lowest in the season. And Bradford's had 9 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. This guy's got more interceptions than touchdowns this season. That's terrible.
It is terrible. You guys made a couple of interesting choices here, but I'm going to have to go with the Eagles because the Niners, they weren't really expected to be very good this season anyway. The Eagles were expected to do something under Chip Kelly's offense, bringing Sam Bradford in, but Bradford hasn't delivered, so point to the Red Scare. And a guy who may have made it onto your list would have been Peyton Manning. That is if his team wasn't so good. The top defense in the league has led Denver to its 7-0 record. Another team who's surprising with its now 8-0 record is the Cincinnati Bengals. And that third-ranked offense led by a brand-new Andy Dalton. Some interesting starts from these two teams. So I want to hear from you, Estelle. Which of these teams has left a better impression upon you?
I'm going to say the Broncos. They're 7-0. The defense is the best in the NFL. Manning still can rush a pass. I know he's getting old, but he's still very reliable. He's had 263 yards per game. They have the wide receiver of Emmanuel Sanders and the running back C.J. Anderson. And Denver is getting 350.7 yards per game right now. They're still doing very well, and I guess as the season progresses, we will see where they go.
All right, so Estelle says Broncos. You got
so
Bengals time.
My issue with the Broncos is that their weakness is in their offense. They are undefeated, but they have failed to score 2 touchdowns in 2 games, which is pretty ridiculous. The Bengals, however, are doing completely great this season, undefeated. Andy Dalton is on his way to an MVP caliber season, doing much better than Peyton Manning. Last night, Ivor scored 3 touchdowns, which pretty much proves how the Bengals are doing pretty well overall.
I'm going to have to say I was impressed with the way that the Bengals were able to fight last week. After seeing how good they were, it was almost just equally as impressive to see how they did in a close game like that. I'm going to have to give the points to Sarah. Apparently we got ourselves a game now. It's 6-3 here in the dojo, so it's not over yet. 2 rounds down, 1 round away from the end of semifinal number 1. We are taking another break, but Connor Smith and Malcolm Kellner will join me at the desk when we come back. This is it. 3 questions is all you guys have now. One of you guys will be back in 2 weeks. The other will say goodbye until 2016. Connor, I know that you're not going to let that happen. You have to sweep this final round in order to find your way in the championship. How you feeling about that?
I'm feeling pretty confident, damn it. I'm finally in my aspect with basketball. It's the one sport that I'm watching every day. So I'm pretty confident that I can do something here.
Oh, all right. He's all over it. Malcolm.
Well, Damon, thanks to Andre and Estelle, I have very little pressure on me in this round. I just need to win 1, but doing that is still going to be tough. against a strong opponent in Connor. He knows his basketball, so.
So do you. We
Oh,
got
well,
this.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, there's a little bit too much respect here for the last round of a playoff matchup. But let's just go to the NBA, which has blown up over the last couple of years, really. A lot of media attention, and this season is continuing that growing trend. As we can see, LeBron's sleeves is apparently the coolest thing in America. The defending champion Warriors are looking more than ready for another championship. Steph somehow got better, and the Raptors are undefeated. Russell Westbrook is nearly averaging a triple-double. Andre Drummond in Detroit putting up 20 and 20 through his first 4 games. Connor, what has been the most surprising to you?
Well, I'm going to have to say the Portland Trail Blazers. The fact that they were 3-2 up until yesterday is fantastic. They lost 4 of their 5 starters, including LaMarcus Aldridge, who is just like a perennial all-star every year. The fact that they were able to even put out 1 win in this schedule so far is incredible. Let's see. Lillard is averaging 27 points and 7 assists, one of the best marks in the NBA right now. C.J. McCollum is actually coming into his own and scoring 22.6 points per game on 45% shooting, which is astounding. Plumlee has been a good addition to the team. He's been playing solid defense. His rebounding numbers have gone up by 3 this season. He's playing with more confidence. And especially Al-Farouq Aminu coming out of nowhere, having a breakaway season. 14 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, shooting just under 50%. When all he's done in his career is average 6.5 points and 5.3 rebounds. He's been that spark that's actually allowed that starting lineup to score points alongside Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum.
Yeah, I've been surprised too, and Al-Farouq Aminu definitely has come into his own this season. Malcolm?
Yeah, you know what, Damon? I'm not that surprised by the Blazers because, I mean, you talked about Damian Lillard. I mean, he's one of the best top 5 point guard in the NBA, if not top 4 or 3. C.J. McCollum was a mid-first round pick. I mean, the guy just needed his chance, and now he's getting it. It's obvious that he was going to succeed. I mean, this guy can shoot the lights out. All he needed was Wes Matthews to leave for him to shine. My most surprising team is the Detroit Pistons. 3-1 with impressive wins against the Bulls, Jazz, and at Atlanta. Most pundits thought they wouldn't be that good. They lost. Let's not forget, they lost Greg Monroe to the Bucks in the offseason. But all that's done is allowed Andre Drummond to flourish. You mentioned in the opening, 20 and 20 this year. That's just ridiculous. Reggie Jackson is finally coming into his own as a starting point guard in the league, averaging 19 and 5.5. Marcus Morris is somehow becoming like a star player, averaging 17.3 and 7.5. That's very surprising. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, he's finally fulfilling his potential that the Pistons saw in him when they took him as, I think, the 8th overall pick in the 2013 draft. So, I mean, this team, people expected to maybe sneak into the playoffs, but now this team is looking like a top seed in the Eastern Conference, and that's most surprising to me.
Now, Connor, you mentioned that Portland has done well against a tough schedule. He brought up the schedule that the Pistons have had to face. Tell me some of the teams that Portland has had to take on.
So Portland in the last week, they have had to take on. Last night they took on Memphis, who has always been one of the better defensive teams especially in the West, but mainly the NBA. Without any support from a solid center, their starting center is Myers Leonard. If anyone remembers Myers Leonard from, I think it was the 2012 draft, and he went 11th overall and has not been anything ever since that. Playing against tough defenses like that, especially with an offense now with Mike Conley has been coming into his own, players like that. They played against the Pacers at the beginning of the season. They had a win by 10 points, which was just phenomenal. Paul George is back, which is a scary matchup for anyone, especially someone like C.J. McCollum, who ended up having to go neck and neck against that. He scored 25 in that game against a great defender and great offensive player in Paul George. Overall, I think the Detroit Pistons are not that surprising, being one of the teams that, especially with Greg Monroe leaving, allowing Andre Drummond to be that centerpiece.
But they're losing a huge, I mean, Monroe is one of the best centers in the game, one of the best big men in the game. They're losing a huge offensive and defensive force in Monroe. They've only gotten better. It just boggles the mind because it's been addition by subtraction. It doesn't make sense.
But with that, they've also added other pieces. Like you said, Morris is playing like out of his mind this season. He's needed
right,
that.
and he's been an average player for the rest of his career, and now he's like a star.
The fact that he's able to move to a team like this and actually like be able to play to his caliber is what like has made him this good. You've said things like Reggie Jackson. He needed to get onto this team to play well. Morris getting onto this team.
But he's never proven himself as a starter in the league. He's been behind Russell Westbrook his whole career.
Yeah, and that's why he hasn't gotten the chance to start it up.
I'm going to stop it here, and that's the same point that you were also making about C.J. McCollum that he's now made about a couple of your players. I'm going to have to give the points to Connor here. I'm very impressed with what they're doing right now. Detroit has looked impressive as well, but I'm going to have to give the points to Portland because I didn't see that coming. They have nothing to surround Damian Lillard. But let's move on to something that me, the Lakers fan, the sorry Lakers fan, understands a little bit better, and that is, yes, disappointments. Kobe, he looks like a shell of his former self. LA is 0-4 right now. James Harden in Houston, they're struggling. Anthony Davis and his Pelicans, they're struggling. A lot of negatives early in the season as well. Malcolm, what has been the most disappointing story so far?
It's a team with 0 wins, Damon, and I'm not talking about the Lakers because everyone knew they were going to be bad. I'm talking about the New Orleans Pelicans, as you also mentioned. At 0-4, they're by far the biggest disappointment in the NBA because pundits expected them to be in the playoffs, again, like they were last year. I mean, why wouldn't they be? They lost no one in the offseason. Another year of improvement for Anthony Davis, who had the top player efficiency rating in the NBA last year. He's by far the best young player in the NBA, and it's not even close. He's playing terribly this year. They have no starter shooting above 40%. Drew Holiday's struggling. Eric Gordon's struggling. Ryan Anderson's struggling. Tyreek Evans is hurt. But still, without him, they have enough players where they should be, at least at 2-2 right now. They've been just terrible. Their defense has been porous. They've allowed 115 points per game through 4. That's second to last in the league, behind only, guess who, Damon? The Lakers.
I don't know what you're
and
talking about.
they have Anthony Davis, who's the best defensive player in the league. So that's really concerning. Huge disappointment. Pelicans were supposed to be a playoff team. Their whole team is terrible. Davis has been terrible for his standards. Huge, huge disappointment.
He's disappointed. He's very disappointed.
Very disappointed.
You seem very disappointed.
Connor, who are you
I'm so
disappointed about?
disappointed.
While the Pelicans are very disappointing, I'm going to have to go with the Houston Rockets. 2-3 to start the season. Three of their losses came at 20-point blowouts to Denver, the Golden State, and Miami. Well, Golden State's the best team in the league. That's
two outstanding teams.
Yeah,
Golden State and Miami.
two teams who have come to their own this season. But still, the Rockets were in the conference finals last year. Put up a good fight in the playoffs in general. You got James Harden. You got Dwight Howard. This entire team has been fantastic. Not a lot changed. They even brought in Ty Lawson, who really takes the pressure off of James Harden, so he can score more and Lawson can dish out the assists. But what's really happening is that Lawson is taking away a lot of that scoring pressure. He's not actually taking away the scoring pressure. He's putting up some good numbers, but James Harden, he's shooting 29% from the field. James Harden, who's one of the better shooters in the NBA,
And
who has been.
He'll rebound. He'll rebound.
Oh, well, so will Davis. So will the rest of the Pelicans team.
Well, maybe not. Maybe not the rest of the Pelicans.
Yeah, but if you're talking about Davis as one of the best young players in the NBA, he'll rebound too. If
Well,
that's your
we're talking
argument.
about who's been.
Why won't they rebound? If you're going to say, why wouldn't they rebound?
Why won't the Pelicans
Yes.
rebound? I mean, Tyreek Evans is hurt. You've got very offense-only players in Gordon and Drew Holiday. They don't play any defense, so their offense will improve, but I don't know about their defense. They're 0-4. The Rockets are 2-3. If you flip the script with one of the games, if they win one more game, they're 3-2 and over 500. And then we're talking about them as a succeeding team. So I'm talking about a team that's 0-4, has been blown out almost 4 times, has been just terrible in every way. The Rockets at least have 2 wins. They're only 1 under 500. 0-4 versus 2-3. The Rockets were expected to be a playoff team, and they will be. I mean, they win one more game. I feel silly discussing this through 4 and 5 games, but the fact is the Pelicans at 0-4, you got to win at least a game first.
All right,
It's
Connor,
just been
last point.
All right, so you're saying that because of all these injuries, the Pelicans are disappointing. There's also a lot of injuries on the Houston Rockets. Kiaunis is gone. He's been a solid addition at the power forward. Terrence Jones has not been playing very well. He's also been out a couple of the games. Overall, with James Harden shooting 29% from the field, Dwight Howard's having an average season for Dwight Howard. 16 points, 9.7 rebounds, and 1.7 blocks.
that's about what he did last year.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but he was also injured a large amount of last year. He's coming into this season healthy. He worked all the last offseason to get back to this point. Overall, the Houston Rockets are the most disappointing team, going from a conference final with an MVP caliber player in James Harden, who's shooting 29% from
And Davis
the field.
is an MVP caliber
right.
player
Oh, yes,
too,
he
and
is.
he's averaging
I'm gonna have
5 points less than last
all
year.
right. You can hear a pin drop in here, huh? The question is,
suspenseful.
do we play another day or play another question, or do we not? Well, we're going to play it anyway, but I'm going to have to give the points to the Red Scare here. The Pelicans, they have played Golden State twice, so maybe they're not as bad as they look, but they're winless right now. I know you're upset, Connor, but
Very
they are still
upset,
winless
David.
right now. And the guy who was supposed to be, one of possibly the best players of all time, not just an MVP caliber player in Anthony Davis, is really struggling. A lot going on there. Houston, as you said, looked terrible, and I would have agreed with you through the first 3 games of the season where they got blown out by 20 points apiece in those games, but they've since won their last 2. So I'm going to
This
have
team's
to
like
give the points
Orlando.
to the Red Scare. And we know now that the Red Scare and Malcolm Kellner are the alpha dogs today, but what we don't know is who the alpha dog is in OKC. The Thunder have both KD and Russell Westbrook healthy now and playing well, but everybody's assumption is that there can only be room for one after this season. Now, assuming the Thunder retain who they see as being the best player, who do you think the alpha dog is right now?
Me first?
Gonna go with you.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with something a little surprising. I'm going to throw a wrench into the conversation here. Everyone thought I would say Kevin Durant. I'm going to say Russell Westbrook because there's been a changing of the tide in Oklahoma City. Kevin Durant, don't get me wrong. Look, he's still an incredible player, top 2-3 player in the game, an MVP. But Russell Westbrook is the new alpha dog of this team. Don't take it from me, though. Take it from Kevin Durant himself, who the other day, after a loss to the Raptors, he said, yeah, get that wrench out of here. He said, quote, "We had something in that pick and roll, and we spaced the floor a lot, and we let our best player, Russell, we let him control the game. He had 16 assists. He was getting everybody shots, getting himself shots." And I know KD is viewed as a humble guy, so don't think this is just him being humble, because he said this summer and many times before that he's the best player in the world. So if he's willing to say he's the best player in the world, but now he's acknowledging that Westbrook is the best player on the team, I think it's safe to say Westbrook is the better player on the team because no one knows that more than Durant and Westbrook themselves.
Connor.
All right, even though I'm no longer in the playoffs after this, even with this question,
Hey,
I'm still going to
play it all out. We play 60
it.
minutes
I'm
here
still
at the
playing.
UC.
I'm
We
still
play
playing.
60
Oh yeah, I'm
minutes.
still playing with fire. You know what? I'm gonna obviously I have to go with Kevin Durant, but overall, like look at this guy. He's the face of the Thunder. If you think about what you think Oklahoma City Thunder, ask anyone, and even if they don't watch basketball, they think, oh, it's Kevin Durant. 4-time scoring champ, former MVP, last season plagued by injuries, which is a really sad thing because you want to see a person like this play in the NBA. He's like what makes this NBA so much fun. He brings that potential. He's shooting 49% from the field and 41% from three, 29.2 points and 6.2 rebounds. Russell Westbrook may be putting on stats, but he's also putting on a lot of turnovers. 6.5 turnovers per game, which is an astounding number. He's always had turnover troubles, but this is like by far his worst season. With those numbers though, like Durant, again, you said he's a humble guy. He's willing to say, my teammate is having an amazing season, and he's playing better than me. Stats-wise, he might be playing better than him, but that's because he does so much more on the court, whereas Durant is like, he brings it in the locker room. He brings it in press conferences. He's the face of this team, and if you don't think that he's the alpha dog of the Thunder, then there's a real problem there because people want to see him come back. And they want to see both of them come back, but one of them's most likely going to leave after the season. If Durant can show that he is this alpha dog on the team, he's staying. That's just what happens.
Something changed last year. I'll give you, obviously, Durant has been the better player through most of his career up until last year. But when he went down last year, something changed. And Westbrook, I don't know what got into him, but he was playing with a fire like we have never seen before in the NBA, averaging 28.1 points, 8.6 assists, 7.3 rebounds, 11 triple-doubles. That was one triple-double in every 6 games he played, 7 more than second most on the list, James Harden. Westbrook played with just so much passion last year, and he's carried that into this year, and he's played even better this year. He's improved on his points and efficiency numbers. 28.6, 10.6 assists. Yeah, that's right, averaging a double-double, 7 rebounds. Oh, almost a triple-double, too. Does Durant do that? 29.8 points. That's great. That's one more point than Westbrook, but only 6.2 rebounds, 2.7 assists. Westbrook fills up the entire stat sheet. He gets it done more on the defensive end as well. He has more of the energy, more of the passion, fire. Something changed last year. Westbrook has become the alpha dog of this team. Like I said, don't get me wrong. Durant is still great, but Westbrook is the guy now. And Durant even acknowledged it.
Malcolm, that was some great discourse, guys. But you put this down. We've seen it 7 times on the show. I'm going to have to give the points to Connor. Points going to the Blue Steel. Although you guys didn't win, Wrench got you guys real close. Actually, it was pretty much it was a gut-wrenching experience today. It started off as a blowout, but then we really saw the gap close. The first game is over, though. I'm gonna put this wrench down. The Red Scare are moving on to the championship 2 weeks from today. As for the Blue Steel, well, we will see you guys in the winter. It's time to take one final break, and when we return, the Blue Steel, not the Blue Steel, sorry guys, the Red Scare will give their yellow cards here on Sportsmanlike Conduct. One final welcome here. Sorry, Matt Malcolm's got good impressions. It's yellow card time here. Congratulations, first of all, to the Red Scare on the victory, and congratulations as well to the Blue Steel, who did put up a great fight today, but I am here now with the victors, who are waiting for some FaceTime, so we'll begin with the impressionist, Malcolm.
All right. Well, for the viewers who didn't see, I was saying there's 3 rounds. Andre won the first, Estelle split the second, and I won the third. And then we won the championship. But I digress. My yellow card, I wanted to talk about the New York Mets and their heartbreaking loss in the World Series. More specifically, Terry Collins' decision to leave in Matt Harvey for not 1 but 2 batters in the 9th inning. Look, I was watching that game. I was working, actually, and I was watching at the same time. And I said, after 8 innings, during that argument with Collins and Harvey in the dugout, I said, you got to send out Harvey for the 9th inning. He deserves to start that 9th inning. But if the first batter gets on, you yank him out so quick and put in Familia, who's one of the best closers in the game. But he, after a leadoff walk to Lorenzo Cain, where he's nibbling around the strike zone because he didn't feel confident with his fastball, he throws a slider, walks Cain. He leaves him in there to face the lefty Hosmer. You got to pull him after that first batter. Of course, Hosmer, he serves up a meatball. Hosmer double, boom, 2-1. Mets in the driver's seat. They'd end up tying the game, winning in extra innings. Horrible, historically horrible pitching decision by Terry Collins. I'm glad I'm not a Mets fan, because if I was, I wouldn't be able to let that go for a long, long time.
You know, Malcolm, I think you may have had the best yellow card of all time, but you should have pulled yourself, because after that, then well, you know, it was nice that you had to work that night, but, you know, the first half was fantastic. That was probably the funniest yellow card I've ever heard in my life. So, Andre, now you got to step up.
Speaking of something all-time terrible, I'm going to talk about the Lakers, my Lakers. I know Damon's Lakers as well. It's the end of the Kobe era. Can we just accept it? I've loved Kobe for a long time. I hung on to the bandwagon for longer than necessary, longer than I care to admit. But the fact of the matter is, at this point, they need to stop playing Kobe as many minutes as they are. They need to give it to these young guys. Julius Randle has looked great, as Damon and I were just talking about. He's looked great so far through these first few games. D'Angelo Russell, we don't really know what he can do, because they keep taking him out for a guy who's going to be on AARP in a few years in Huertas. Are you kidding me? This guy, this random Spanish kid comes over. I say kid, he's not a kid. I use that word loosely. He's old. They don't need him. There's no point. D'Angelo Russell is younger than I am. Julius Randle, younger than I am. Play these guys. Let them develop. That's the future of this team. Kobe's not going to be there forever. This kid, Huertas, certainly isn't going to be there forever. Hopefully not past this year. I don't understand what they're doing. There's no push for the playoffs. It's not happening. I've heard a few crazy pundits say it, but they shouldn't even be thinking of that. Right now, they should be thinking of trying to get that top 3 protected pick, because it doesn't look that crazy right now. Maybe you tank. Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe that's the grand plan. I have no idea. It's the end of the Kobe era. I'm sad, but play Russell, play Randall, and see what you got.
Well, Andre, I'm very saddened myself, and I would have to agree. I have to say it is the end of the Kobe era, and it is the end of semifinal number 1. One half of the championship equation was solved today. The other half will be taken care of next Friday. Good matchup coming up between the Green Liners and Purple Panthers, so don't miss that. And you have no excuse, actually, because all of our episodes can be seen online at EIVTV.com. For everybody here at the UC, I'm Damon Turbett. See you next week.